Morning. Um, Today we have a wonderful speaker, Pat Dobbs. Been a member of HLAA for a long time. I don't know how many years, but I know she's been around a while. And
Long time.
she's famous. And she's a highly experienced and knowledgeable resource for understanding the impact of hearing loss in the workplace, communication, relationships, and trust. Pat has helped countless individuals and companies identify best practices to be more inclusive of colleagues with hearing loss and how to be more effective allies. Welcome, Pat.
What a nice introduction. Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. So before I start on my presentation, let me tell you a little bit about myself and how I started a company called Being Heard, where I go into the workforce to talk about hearing loss. My story is, when I was about 19 or 20, I was very confused because people all of a sudden started to talk softly and mumbling. Does that ring a bell with anybody, by the way? Talking softly and mumbling. I had no idea what was going on. I really thought they were playing a joke on me because I have no history of hearing loss in my family. Well, obviously, it was the beginning of my hearing loss journey. My hearing over the years went down until I was about 60. I got my first of 2 cochlear implants. So yes, I am bionic. Very proud of being bionic, by the way. So through those years, I was in the workforce. And I'm just going to ask you a question. Do you think I told the people I worked with or my management that I had a hearing loss? Anybody? No, I didn't. I wish I did. I actually considered myself a first-class bluffer. And I'm not a great sight reader. And I know that, well, I know if I ask you, do any of you bluff? Everybody's hand will go up. So I'm going to ask a different question. Please raise your hand if you do not bluff. Oh, Sandy, you don't bluff. Georgia, you don't bluff. Oh my God, I am so proud of you guys. Were you always that way?
I'm late deafened, so I'm a different story. I've had normal hearing until 7 years ago when I lost it. So now I don't bluff because then I'll be out of it.
So I wish I had told people that I had a hearing loss. I finally ran into a work situation where I realized I had to do something. And that was, I was in sales. I was out of the office most of the time. But when I was in the office, I was in a bullpen. That means there's a bunch of people in the office talking. When I was on the phone, it was very difficult. I had a T-coil. That was before Bluetooth. I had T-coil. And when you have T-coil, you talk louder because it's going into your ear, you don't hear what's outside. So you just talk louder. Well, one day I was on the phone and it was an important phone call. Somebody came in the office and she started to talk and I couldn't hear. I had to hear. It was a good sales situation. So I just said to her, could you please be quiet? When I hung up the phone, she yelled and screamed at me. And she said, you talk so loud. How dare you ask me to talk softly? And she was yelling and screaming and she cursed me like I can't even say on this phone call. the owner of the company came marching in. Everybody came marching in. She said to the owner, I demand that she leaves this office. Get her out of this office immediately. And I was unceremoniously, it's hard to say that word, ushered out of the office. Now, I should say one thing. She was the girlfriend of the owner, so she did have a little bit of a sway. But here's the irony of it. I was marched into an empty office. If I had advocated for myself, I would have asked for that empty office in the very first place, but I didn't. But it was so humiliating and so off-putting. I was upset for days, and I finally realized there's got to be a lesson here. I've got to learn to advocate for myself. And that's when I call it, came out of the closet. I joined HLAA. I started a chapter in New Jersey, the Morris County chapter. I gave presentations, I gave workshops, I gave speeches all over the place. You couldn't keep me quiet. So where did being heard come into the place? I advocated for people with hearing loss, but what about the workplace? So about 10 years ago, I went to a SHRM meeting. SHRM is Society for Human Resources. Is anybody here in human resources? Nobody's in human resources, okay. I went to one of the members of ADP. So ADP is a huge corporation. I don't know how many thousands of people they have, but they have a lot. And I said, just casually, what do you do for your people with hearing loss? You know what he said? Does anybody want to guess? Please, somebody guess. No guesses, because you would never believe what he said. He said, oh, we don't have any people with hearing loss. So there are thousands of people in that corporation, but HR says they have no people with hearing loss. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And he really wasn't able, he really didn't want to even listen to me. Do you know what percent of the workforce? I'm hearing feedback. Are we okay? I guess so. Do you know what percent of the workforce has hearing loss? Just take a guess. Just shoot it out.
25%.
25%. Anybody else? Most people think that hearing loss is just an old people's thing. The statistic says that about 12% of the workforce does have hearing loss. So knowing that, last year I went to a presentation, a conference in Minneapolis. It was also a human resource convention where they specialized in DEI. DEI is a hot thing in the workplace now, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's the hot thing right now for human resources. So I just assumed they would have captions for this conference. There were no captions at all. And when I asked people where the captions were, they said, oh, how interesting, captions. This is where human resources. They didn't even think about it. I know. Last year, I went to an HR conference in Maine, and this time I got smart. And I asked them, you know, when they said, do you have any special requests? I said, yes, I'd like captions. And they did not provide captions. But you know what they did do? They totally apologized and refunded my money. And now they're working with me on how to get captions next year. I think people don't really even know what captions are. They don't have any idea how to get them. And I think that's going to be part of my presentation. It's up to us to educate the workforce and people, wherever we go, we have to advocate for ourselves. Okay, I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. Just give me 1 second. So I think everybody needs to see my dogs. I mean, I can't see people right now, but I think you all need to see my dogs. So let's just see if I can, just bear with me 1 second. I want to see if I can be able to see you guys. No. No. Okay. So these are my 2 dogs. The dog on my left was my hearing dog. He helped me all the time. And now we have this dopey little schnook. Okay. So I think what we know is hearing loss is left behind in the workplace. So why is it left behind? And this is what I think. People with hearing loss do not self-identify. And so human resources thinks that no employees have hearing loss. And because they don't think any people have hearing loss, they don't provide any accommodations. But I think companies don't even bring it up. So people don't feel safe self-identifying as having hearing loss. So, hey, Tim, are you there to tell me how I can, or can anybody tell me how I can get the PowerPoint smaller so that I can see you? Can't do that. I think I might, in a few minutes, turn off the PowerPoint because I'm going to be wanting to ask you questions. But here is the mission statement of Being Heard, which is where I go into the workforce to talk about how hearing loss affects their environment. And I do it through presentations and workshops. So what I'm going to do right here, I'm trying view, and all it gives me is center stage or show non-video participants. I think it's because I'm having a problem with my computer. But what I'm going to do right now is show you the presentation that I give to the workplace. And once I give this presentation, I'm actually going to ask you if you think anything is missing, if anything, if there's anything else that I should include. But I love having this video, this picture, because we all know that there's no way that people can see that we have a hearing loss. It's invisible. I know once I went to I had a broken foot and I had to go to the airport. I had to fly wherever it was. And I was really scared. How was I going to go on crutches from one end to the other end? I know it's a great image. And as soon as I got out of the car, they came right away with, how do you call it? They came right out with, I can't, you know what I'm talking about. And they wheeled me right through. But did anybody say, oh, I know you have a hearing loss. You're not going to be able to hear the announcer. I'll help you. That doesn't happen. Yeah, it's invisible. So I always ask my participants, do you know anyone with a hearing loss? And I always do this one before I ask them the second one. Do you have a hearing loss? Because at this point, they're not quite sure if they want to self-identify. But if they say, do you know anyone with a hearing loss? It's easier for them to self-identify. What percent of the US population has a hearing loss? And I would love to be able to ask you, but because I can't see you, it's 1 in 5 or 20% of the population. And what percent of the workforce is in, what percent of that population is the workforce? And again, it's 12%. Then I love asking the difference between deaf and deaf, deaf with a capital D and a small d. Of course, nobody really knows what it is, but we are generally D with a small d, and capital D is if you use sign language to communicate. And I'd love to ask you what percent of you guys do sign language, but hold that until I can see you. But do you know what percent of the hearing loss population knows sign language? I think it's 3, 4, or maybe 5%. It's very small, but they are clearly the group that are the biggest advocates. Try changing the gallery view. Let's just see. Let me just bear with me a second. Try changing your gallery speaker view. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. When I change it, I only get those 2 options. My computer is very sick. It's acting up on me. Okay, so I tell them these are the challenges of people with hearing loss. You know what? I had to take it off of I'm stopping sharing because I need to talk to you guys. I need to hear what you're going to say. So when I show this presentation, when I show the different challenges, help me out. What are the biggest challenges of the people with hearing loss? What would you, what do you see as the biggest challenge? I mean, obviously we mishear, but is it that we bluff? Is it the grief that we feel? Is it the isolation? Just shout out, what are the different challenges that you guys feel with hearing loss?
Missing information.
Missing information, yeah.
Isolation.
Oh man, for sure. You know, everything kind of escalates. Missing information isolates you. Bluffing really isolates you. Oh, what about auditory fatigue? Anybody ever get tired after listening all day long? I mean, who wants to listen all day long? What about the stigma? You know, I hate the fact that I even know the stigma. I hate the fact that there's a part of me that buys into the stigma because we know we're not slow or stupid or spaced out. We just have trouble hearing. So, but when I tell this to people without a hearing loss, they are surprised. They're like, what are you talking about? And I mean, that's a crazy thing. So my next slide, and I'm sorry, I'm not showing it to you, is people with hearing loss depend on lip reading. So how do we feel about masks? Torture, right? But people don't know that. Although, do you know what? This is interesting. Audiologist has said that since the pandemic and people wearing masks, more people are going to audiologists than before. And that's because we're not the only people that lip read. So what are, Okay, I'm going to bring this back up again, and I apologize for going back and forth, but I just need to be able to see you a little bit. Okay, tell me if you guys disagree with this. People with hearing loss want you to know that hearing aids do not give you normal hearing. It's exhausting. Our hearing fluctuates, and it's best to ask us what works best. How to spot someone with hearing loss. Well, we already know this. We wear hearing aids. We don't respond. We make inappropriate answers. I got to tell you what happened to me when I met my partner. He said he was a sailing instructor. I said, sailing instructor. I'm sorry, I said, singing instructor. How lovely. You must sing something for me. Tuning out, overwhelmed or exhausted, flustered expression. These are all things that we recognize, and our loved ones actually can spot these things and know when it's like, yeah, I love this. I love this picture. The intense concentration it takes to hear makes people think that I'm angry. And this is a slide showing how we hear. And of course, it's different depending on what our hearing loss is. But it's sort of a visual representation of what it looks like. And it's important for people who hear to understand that. And there are also apps where people with normal hearing can hear what we hear at different levels. Another example of what it looks like. Even for a deaf person who can lip read very well, it's still a lot of guesswork to figure out what one was saying. And this is my favorite. Waitress, can I ask you something about the menu, please? The men I please are none of your damn business. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing again. Okay, so this is pretty much what I show companies because it's an introduction to what hearing loss is. People have no idea what it is. You know, they just don't know, and we generally don't say anything. The other thing, people always ask me, oh, there's a new regulation about hearing aids where you can get them cheaper. What do you think about that? So I always talk about over-the-counter hearing aids. I just say it right away before they ask me because they're always going to ask me. So I'm just curious, do any of you have over-the-counter hearing aids? Or do you know anybody with OTC hearing aids? You do. Georgia, just curious, what's the feedback you get for people who have over-the-counter hearing aids? You're mute. You're mute.
Okay. I just have one friend, And she buys her hearing aids at Costco. And she loves them. And they work for her. But she has a mild hearing loss, so maybe that's why. But I just know one person.
Well, over-the-counter hearing aids are for mild to moderate. They're not for somebody like me who's totally deaf. And Costco, I've heard good things and bad things about Costco. I think it probably depends on your audiologist, the audiologist at Costco. Do anybody here go to Costco? No, okay. Oh, you do, Anne. Do you have a good experience with Costco?
Well, I didn't go to the audiologist there. I did check into their hearing aids, but I haven't jumped in yet.
Well, I'm just going to say I've heard good things and bad things. I think the one advantage of them is I live in Maine, and a lot of people in the winter go to Florida for the winter. And if you go to an audiologist in Maine, you can't go to an audiologist in Florida to get that fine tuning. But if you go to Costco, they'll handle it in both locations. So I think that is an advantage. That is something I like. The other thing I talk about is the difference between hearing aids and cochlear implants. And most people, of course, have no idea what cochlear implants are. So I'm just curious, how many of you guys have cochlear implants? I don't see everybody, but my rough guess is there are about 40% of you guys with cochlear implants, give or take. Okay, so the number is always increasing. And I know that I've only heard success stories. I think the hardest cochlear implantees are those that have been deaf from birth, where speech is not part of their auditory system. But otherwise, if you have, like I lost it when I had speech, so for me it was successful. I will say I still am not great with speech and noise. I'd love to say I were perfect. And there's a lot of settings with cochlear, and I can use the mini mic, but I still do have trouble with speech and noise. Okay, so once I tell the workplace what it's like to have a hearing loss, I'd like to talk about the ramifications of hearing loss in the workplace. And of course, there's really just one thing, that companies are interested in it. Guess what that is?
The bottom
Oh,
line, the
what
bottom
did
line.
you say?
Money.
Bottom line, exactly. What else is important? Although HR and now DEI are saying that if people are happy and content and feel trust in their workplace, they're more likely to stay. And it's cost effective to have people stay rather than leave and retrain and leave and retrain. But what I say is communications is one of the biggest challenges in the workplace. Actually, it's one of the biggest challenges in the world. How often do people misunderstand what you're trying to say, or vice versa? You misunderstand what people are trying to say. It's a challenge in life. And guess what? Hearing loss is a communication disorder. So if communications is a challenge, and then we add hearing loss onto it, we've got a bit of a communication conundrum. Is that the right way of saying that word? Conundrum. Did I say that right? Okay, I hope I said it right. When hearing loss is not recognized, you'll have missed deadlines because there's a communication issue. You have lower team productivity, and this is the one that they love: loss of money, lower return of investment. Am I missing anything? I think that's the bottom line, is this communication is hindered. And whatever those ramifications are in your workplace, that's what they do. And I have a joke, which I'll show you later, but it shows an artist painting St. George and the dragon. But they don't want St. George and the dragon. I'm going to show you never mind. Let me show you the comic when we're finished, when I can bring it up again. You know, talking sometimes is no good, and just seeing it is fun. So what I say is, workplaces, if they create a safe environment for people to talk about hearing loss, it makes people feel valued. So, for example, at my office, they knew I had a hearing loss. Believe me, they knew it. I was there when I had my cochlea implant, so obviously I was out of the office. Now, of course, I never asked for accommodations. I never asked to sit in the front row when there were big presentations. I never asked for people to talk one at a time. But on the other side, they never said, "Oh, Pat, we see you have a hearing loss. Is there anything we can do to help you out? We want to make you feel safe." They never did that. So I'm just curious, how many of you are in the workplace right now? Do your places of work acknowledge your hearing loss? Do they do anything about it? Lisa, you're in the federal government. Do they do anything about it?
I mean, I wouldn't say proactively, but if I ask for accommodations, I usually can get them. So
Do you have,
oh, go ahead.
do you have to fight to get the accommodations, or do you get them easily?
No, I get them easily. I'm very grateful. I can request CART for pretty much any meeting, and I can usually get it. And that's my main accommodation, but I requested a slight change of job tasks, which was no problem. So that I find the environment that I'm in now is very accommodating.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Thanks.
Oh, I work for the federal government too. It's very easy for me too. All the meetings, there's a little blurb saying if you need any accommodation, please request. But yeah, but my problem is when we go in person, when there's big conference, it's hard to hear that. Oops. But in terms of other reasonable accommodation, it's easy to request. So I request to work at home full time, so I don't have to deal with commute. So I got that. So it's very easy in terms of getting accommodation. So you have to know what you want. They can provide. And sometimes I don't even know what I want. That's the problem. Yeah.
You know, Linda, you bring up a really good point, is knowing what you want. Sometimes I know for myself, when I was in the workplace, well, I never even thought to ask for accommodations, but there's a lot of different things available. What works best for you? What will work best in that situation? I don't remember, was there anybody else who was in the workforce that wanted to talk? Then I'm going to ask a different question. Valencia, please.
I'm retired now. However, my experience is similar to you. I didn't share my hearing loss. When I did share, I didn't ask for accommodations. Towards the end of my career, my confidence level went up. I was involved in a hearing loss support group. So I did speak up, yet the stigma still had a hold of me, and I wasn't advocating as much as I could have. But I did get accommodations towards the end of my career. They put me in an area that was more quieter. I was able to get a specialized phone to communicate. However, the conferences were still hard for me to follow. And I wouldn't say I had to fight, but it was exhausting that I had to keep having this conversation about my hearing loss because I wasn't comfortable in the advocating part. And of course, they're not offering, because they don't really see people with hearing loss and they have no knowledge. But I just wanted to share that.
No, I appreciate it. Lindsay, just curious, did you work for a large or a small company?
Yes, I worked for the state of transportation. So I was always communicating, listening to people problems, problem solving, communicating with my team members. It's just, I would be exhausted when I get home. So yes.
That's one thing I wish people would understand, how tired we get. Georgia,
Yeah.
who else?
Laura wanted
Okay,
to say something too.
Am I
Georgia,
on?
go ahead, and then Denise.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I grew up hard of hearing, so, and I wore 2 hearing aids for 30 years. And I was able to get a job. My background is accounting. But then as I got older, my hearing dropped and I wasn't able to use the telephone anymore. So when I applied for a job, I had to tell them that I couldn't answer the phone anymore. And this was in the 80s. And they were like, oh, well, we'll get back to you, and so on and so forth. I had the experience, the background. But because of the fact that I told them I couldn't answer the phone, that was an issue. So I was out of work for about 3 months. So the unemployment office sent me to another unemployment office who had a connection to the city of Los Angeles. So long story short, I went there and I was interviewed and I stayed with them for 31 years. But this is also a civil service job. Everyone else that has spoken up here, except maybe for a few people, they accommodated me. I had a captioned phone. Everybody in the office knew I was deaf. So, and I would tell people I was deaf, so you need to look at me when you talk to me, get my attention. So I started early on advocating for myself, but then I was also very fortunate that I had a job where they accommodated me and they didn't question it. If I
Thanks,
needed
Georgia.
cart, they gave me cart. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Georgia. That's great. That's great. Thanks. Denise, please don't forget to unmute.
Okay, hello, can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I had a very similar experience. Many years I worked for a not-for-profit healthcare system here in Texas. And I was one of those, persons that I didn't really pursue seeking accommodation until it got really bad for me, to the point where I was really struggling in my job as well. And quite opposite of what everyone else is saying, my company, even though it was a healthcare company, they did not have an ADA office. No one wanted to accommodate. No one knew even what to do when I started asking for accommodations. And it was just a nightmare. And I ended up retiring early after that, after 20 something years. And the one thing that really stood out to me after I thought about it, after I started getting involved with organizations like this, I had no idea as far as what benefits I could have, secured under the ADA platform. I found out that my evaluations were always, when they evaluate you on your job performance, you're excellent, 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 until it came down to the point where your communications. And my communication was always like below par. And I'm looking at them, well, I'm hard of hearing. I've asked for these things, but life is what it is. And sometimes, you just get tired of the fight. I was mentally exhausted, from trying to be in this space. And so I ended up retiring early, but I definitely understand about the accommodations and asking for them. And then so many people on here are so blessed where your companies were able to do it. I was opposite of that situation. My company, they just would look at me like I was speaking in Latin or something. All of a sudden, they just couldn't get it. But a major healthcare organization, I couldn't understand it. So yeah, it's so many different areas on the spectrum for people to be accommodated that I'm so happy about HLAA and what we're doing to educate each other now.
Totally. Totally. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I laughed when you said it's like you're speaking Latin. You're right. Hearing loss is like, so I think we know hearing loss is overlooked. And we know it's overlooked. Why? Because it's invisible, right? We don't advocate because of the stigma. Well, some people do. I shouldn't say that. When we don't identify, we don't ask for accommodations, and we don't ask for accommodations, we make mistakes, like I did when I met my partner, saying he was a singing instructor rather than a sailing instructor. By the way, did I tell you that I asked him to sing something for me? So he says he's a sailing instructor. I say, how lovely to be a singing instructor. Please sing something to me. Now, just think if that were in the workforce, how that would totally mess up whatever that group was working with. Can you imagine? But in the workforce, if they don't know, they think you're a little spooky, right? They think you're.
I just want to say, did you want to say something? I think I saw Laura's hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I am still in the closet, so to speak, as you said, at work. I have not self-identified or asked for any accommodations. I've kind of made my own accommodations here and there. I have long thought that my supervisor has had some sort of hearing loss just because he has that look, that I recognize. And I have, hearing issues. I understand him fine, I thought. Separately, we have been having a lot of misunderstandings lately, and it's actually led to a horrible performance review that I just got. And it just occurred to me that those two things could possibly be related. I'm going to have to think about that. I mean, I don't think it's just me because he causes confusion for a lot of people, but it could be, his hearing loss that is part of the issue. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that, but it was so bad that I'm actually looking for another job. So it sucks for me that it had to come to that. So very frustrating.
I am so sorry that's happening. I'm so sorry. I think we can all identify with what you're saying. And I hope that at one point you are very clear to him. I'm going to give you another misunderstanding that illustrates misunderstandings. My friend Joy said, oh, Tom came over last night and he was farting all night. So I started to laugh. And she looked at me like I am like, I said, is that what you said? She said, no, he was fainting. Can you imagine that kind of a confusion? I am so sorry. Please go ahead. And I forgot your name, but your HLA Los Angeles chapter.
So, okay, my name is not there, but anyway, I'm Wendy, and just wanted to say that miscommunication can be so detrimental, but yet it happens so quickly. I mean, point in case, and I really feel for you, Laura, but even for me, at the worst, yes and no sounded the same. So when something was, and because it wasn't yes and no, you have people who say yeah, and yeah, nah, and then all of a sudden, it's yes and no sounded the same. I received them the same way. So, and that's very different. A yes is a yes and a no is a no. But I would urge you before you leave, if you like your job and if, to just maybe have a sit down with I think it was your supervisor or something, and really hash out if there was some communication issues that maybe contributed to this. And this was going to be the time when, you would have to share just how hard it is for you to hear certain things in certain places. But in the workforce, and in general, like Pat is saying, any miscommunication, and if no one says to you, what you just said makes no sense. Well, did you hear me correctly? If they don't say that and you don't know, and they go about their business thinking, okay, whatever, she's not, and you don't even know you had a miscommunication, then, it can be detrimental. Only if someone actually tells you because you don't know. It's just like the person who's talking to you from behind. You don't know they said anything. They swear they said, well, I told you this, this, and that. And you're like, I don't remember that. I didn't, it's because they told it to you from the side, from the back. So in your world, it didn't happen. For them, it did. That's a clash. So we have to really be, understanding and making sure that anything he said to you, or she or whatever, and my response now is, okay, you said that. Did I respond? And then if they say, well, no, but you heard me, I'm like, no, not necessarily. So my thing is, if I don't respond, then you can't, then we didn't communicate because I'm not the type to just ignore anything. So if you didn't get an actual response, then that means we didn't communicate. So you have to get my attention or whatever. But I just hope that you can find some way to really communicate what you think are the issues.
Thank you. Actually, this has been coming for quite some time. I've been wanting to leave anyway, so this was just a good, reminder of like, let's hurry it up. I'm not so sure if it's the hearing misunderstandings or if it's just there's a lot of misunderstandings of like what he's expecting from me versus what I'm willing to give. But I mean, there may be some hearing issues as well, I think I understand him fine, but maybe he's not understanding me fine. And that's what makes him think that I'm not doing what he wants. I don't know. But yeah, I'm ready to leave anyway. But yeah, it's long overdue. So this was a good reminder, but it was miserable to sit through. It's horrible that it had to come to that. I don't know. Thanks though.
Whatever the reasons, whatever is going on, it's clear that hearing loss is a communication disorder. And it's also clear that there are some companies that are really proactive about hearing loss, but I would say 99% of them are not. Maybe the federal government or state agencies are more proactive, but I do know people in federal agencies that do not get they get accommodations if they fight for it, like really fight. So what I do is I go into the workforce, and first of all, I get presentations on I give them the presentation I just gave you, what it's like to have a hearing loss, why we might miss what people say, why we might get exhausted, why we don't hear people when they talk to us from the back, why we don't hear when multiple people are talking at once. I try to sort of give them an overview, but then I give workshops. And one of my favorite workshops is to give a workshop on communication strategies for people with hearing loss and the people that they communicate with. Because we have, how do you say it? We have a place to advocate for ourselves, and we have something that we should do. Like, we should automatically sit in a seat where we're going to hear the best. We should automatically say, we have a hearing loss. Can you look at me when you talk? Or, I have a hearing loss. Please don't two people talk at the same time. But the people we communicate with have things that they need to do too, that they may not like. Like, we need for them to look at us. And actually, everything I've said, they need to do in reverse. And I think, like my friend Debbie, her husband has just started to lose his hearing. And she says she wants to talk to him so that he hears best. But sometimes she forgets. Like, sometimes she talks fast. Sometimes she yells at him from upstairs. She doesn't mean it, but she forgets. And it's difficult. It's not easy. Or, what is our favorite thing when people say never mind? We go ballistic, right? When people say never mind. But think about their end of it. That moment, that perfect moment, is lost. And they have to explain it, and that the perfect moment is lost. So yeah, of course they should do it, but it's not easy for them. So I give workshops on communication strategies, and I talk to managers individually. I talk to people with hearing loss individually. I do whatever it takes. My background is a coach, so I do whatever is necessary. But what I say is, we all have a job to do. It's our job to let people know that we have a hearing loss. It's our job to advocate for ourselves. If we're in the workforce, it's our job to let them know what accommodations we need. It's just our job. I can't do it by myself. It takes a family, and it's the family of us to let the workplace know what we need and that we are out there. And if it's not a safe place for us to come out, it's not going to work. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pat. We're coming to the close of this meeting, but I would like Missy O to be able to make a brief comment as we close this section of our meeting. We are going to move into our recap of the convention and talk about that a little bit. But Missy, I want to give you an opportunity to say something. And thank you so much, Pat, for this very insightful and informative and helpful presentation. I think we've all, just gained a lot just talking about this issue again and again, and that which is new, that which is old, but everybody, I'm sure, can be appreciative of it. But I would let Missy say something.
I just want to say thank you so much. I have to sign off because I have a memorial service I have to run to now. But thank you so much. I love being with you guys. See you later. Bye.
Missy is going to say something. Maybe it's directed to you before you go. Missy,
Oh,
can you
okay.
unmute?
I'm still here.
Okay, so I mean, so they know I have a hearing loss in my workplace, and one of the ways that my hearing loss is used against me is that they will often claim that they said something when I know for sure they didn't say. For example, they may tell me I start a word task, and then I'm almost halfway through it, or whatever, and then all of a sudden they say, "Oh, you had to have the thing completed by tonight. And I'm like, what? No, and then I say, you know, and then for example, I told my supervisor, I did not appreciate you waiting until the last minute when the shift was done for me to tell me that it didn't have to be done much tonight. And then they come back and say, well, I told you so. You know? And this is one of the instances where I feel like I can't win in this case at all because they just think I didn't hear them when I know that they didn't tell me. Because supervisors have a habit of not doing that. And it's like I can't get around that. So I don't even know how to deal with stuff like that. Other people had their experience.
Well, Georgia, did you want to say something very quickly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know what kind of work you do, but do you use a computer? Or do you have texting? Somebody should text you, or, you know, so you have it in writing. That, I don't know what you do, but the shift is over, or there's a deadline or something. You know, you should have something in writing because, you know, we misunderstand, you know, I have cochlear implants, but I still misunderstand. So if I have something in writing, confirmation, so maybe you can advocate for yourself that way to make it easier for you and everybody else. And, you know ahead of time. I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, I agree with that. You know, getting things in writing is probably the easiest, best way, if that's possible. And it could be, like Georgia said, a text, an email, something on a piece of paper, but just something that clarifies. And we certainly hope that, um, you know, that things will improve. I just want to just say before Pat leaves that too, the way to get these accommodations is often to go through HR. Sometimes our immediate supervisor or that person or whatever, they don't understand, they might not want to understand. So the best person to go to, or the best part, is to go through your HR and then see what can be done that way. But again, thank you so much, Pat. We really enjoyed everything um, you said this morning, and just thank you for being here. And you know, yeah, I know you have to go, but so thank you again. Right.
No, it's my pleasure. Please, anybody, if you know companies that's looking for somebody like me to talk, please let me know. And don't forget to advocate. I love you all. Thank you so much.